Today, in this Regs in Brief special, we've invited Paul Collins, Technical Director of NICEIC, to come and answer some questions about the industry and in particular about the assessment process for NICEIC certified businesses and electricians. Paul, welcome, thanks for coming.
No problem, thanks Dave.
So let's get right in there. What do NICEIC assessors require during a visit or an annual assessment? What do they look for?
So the assessment's broken down into a number of parts. Initially we're looking in office-based systems, we're looking for management systems, insurances, publications, they've got CPD records, supervision records of their staff. So that's what we're starting to look for in the office aspect of it. Then we're going out to look at sites, we're going out to look at a number of jobs, look at the work that's been carried out by that business.
And what sort of time is spent on each of those visits?
It varies. You know, the units the visits are broken down into units. We generally have a half day around about 3 hours generally for an assessment, or you could be there for 2 units, which is generally a full day, which could be 6 to 7 hours. So it varies depending on the size of the business, the type of work that they're doing. You know, some of the largest businesses, we spend a number of days with them across a period of time.
And how often, the larger businesses, I understand, will be a different kettle of fish. Let's think about the individual contractors. How often would a contractor expect to see an assessor?
So we carry out annual assessments of businesses, all types of businesses.
But does that happen?
Yes.
So how many inspectors have you currently got that are doing that, and how many contractors?
So roughly around 38,000 businesses, and probably the figures around about 150 assessors at the moment. 150.
So when you go in there, I mean, I talk to contractors all the time, and they obviously hate their assessment because nobody likes being assessed, and there's no comment about the assessors. But how much knowledge are they expected to display? How tough are those assessors when they go in there?
Well, I used to be a QS, so I know what it feels like to be assessed by one of the engineers. What they need to demonstrate is competence for their business, you know, that they understand BS 7671, that they can install, you know, carry out periodic inspection, issue certificates and reports, and demonstrate that the people they've got working for them, if they've got a number of staff, are competent to do that work. So it's about competence and the type of work that they do.
So what depth of knowledge would you expect them to show? Because the regs are a chunky old document. In other words, how current has their knowledge got to be? Would they have to display a recent exam, for instance? I mean, where do you go with that?
So they need to have a working knowledge of BS 7671. You know, we don't expect them to...
The current edition?
Yes, the current edition. We don't expect them to know every single bit of the book. You know, nobody knows the whole book front to back. So they need to demonstrate the knowledge of you know, the work that they do and how to find information in the book. So, you know, if they need to understand earthing and bonding, you know, which section to go to, you know, which special locations. And yes, the QS will need to hold a 7671 qualification up to the current requirements. So, you know, in the future, when regulations do change, they will be expected to update their knowledge for that as well.
But that's an interesting point, which is one of the things we get asked a lot, is every time it changes, do I have to re-qualify? So just take an example, if you've got the 17th Amendment 3, would that be now acceptable now that we're at the 18th Amendment 2? How far back would you be expected to know?
So in that context, if you had a 17th edition Amendment 3, you would be expected to update to the 18th edition. We've just had Amendment 2 you know, released. What we're saying there is that the QSs that are existing QSs, you know, can update via CPD, and there's lots of different CPD training out there, you know, lots of different platforms for that. When we do see the next change in BS 7671, whether it's Amendment 3 or maybe the 19th edition, then the industry will need to have a look at how much change has happened, whether we need to actually do a CPD type course or whether it's a full qualification. So, you know, that guidance will come as we know more about what's happening in the future.
But just to try and pin that one really down, because that's what we're talking about today, that person who's got the Amendment 3, 17th Amendment 3, should they really be thinking now, I need to get myself at least up to speed CPD-wise, if not with a qualification on the Second Amendment?
So if we've got an applicant coming through, they want to join the scheme, and they've got a 17th edition Amendment 3 and older Regs Qual, then they would need the 18th edition version of that to be able to apply. So yeah, you need to start thinking about that.
And that's a new applicant. If it's an older hand and they really are not aware of some of the changes that took place in Amendment 2, what's the process then? What happens at the inspection?
So yeah, if they're not demonstrating sufficient knowledge as part of the assessment, then there's a number of things that can happen. we can give them evidence required to go and do the 18th edition qualification, or we can say that you need to, undertake some further training, update yourself, your knowledge around certain parts of that. So it's a different approach. There's no one size fits all for everybody.
But in that situation, or if in fact if you find any, so we say negligence or anything that's not really up to spec, what's the process then? What's their status within the organisation then?
Well, again, that will vary on what the issue is. So if we found some work that's not up to the current requirements and labels missing, for example, we can ask for evidence for that. So send us in photographic evidence. We can review that. If it's something a lot more complex, more serious, we can actually say, okay, you need to rectify that, and we're coming back to look at it. We can do additional assessments. Ultimately, the final sort of option we have available to us is suspension removal from the scheme. So if the company isn't able to demonstrate competence, what we can actually do is remove them from our schemes, and we do that.
Because it seems that there's a couple of reasons why you're doing this. Really, you're looking after the contractor's competency and the ability to do the work, but obviously it's the safety of the public as well.
Yeah.
So because I think the NICEIC logo is still the most trusted logo, I would imagine, that people want to see on electricians' vans. So they're looking to you in a way to look after them.
Yeah, the consumer protection piece is key to this. If you've got a contractor doing work in your house, you want it done right to the right standards. And what we're doing is giving assurance that contractors that are being assessed to the standards, and that the work that they do, should comply with the requirements of 7671.
What's your feeling, Paul, about the way we run things in this country? Do you think that level of assurance is adequate? Do you think we do police our electricians well enough? Would you like to see it harder? Would you say it be less stringent? What's your feeling?
That's a very interesting question. I think if you look at the QS model works. The company's got to allow the QS to do the work, the supervision, making sure that they're going out to see the work being carried out. So that model really does work, but you've got to allow it to work.
It seems to us, we've discussed this often when we talk about the 18th training and the exam. So there's a pass mark in the exam of 60%. Everybody that passes 60% gets the same qualification. What's your feeling about some sort of merit mark or some way of indicating that somebody is of a higher quality than someone else? Just an open question. What do you think about that?
An interesting question. I think if you look at the apprenticeship and the training around that, you can get past credit distinctions for different units. But with the 18th edition, it's an industry standard exam. It's almost like a CPD type qualification. I don't think it needs it, to be fair.
And in terms of a contractor themselves, you wouldn't want a gold standard contract or anything like that. I'm just trying to think of ways. I think it's ways of reassuring the public that in this fairly wide world of electricians, where we know that anybody can turn up and be an electrician. If they're not with an organisation, they can still do the work. They've got to get it signed off. Trying to give some assurances to the public about that. I'm just interested when you sit in your meetings discussing the future, what are your thoughts about that?
I think with the bronze, silver, gold sort of approach, we have standards. The electrotechnical assessment specification, the mandatory technical competence requirements are the standards. So by employing a contractor that is certified by NICEIC, for example, or the other schemes, you are at that level of competence to be able to do that work. So I think from a consumer perspective is use a certified business. That gives you that level of assurance.
I guess where all these questions are coming from is I go out and I talk to a lot of contractors in the work that I do. I mean, in the last 6 months, I've been told I've spoken to 7,000 contractors. I'm sure some of them came twice, but basically I'm out there mixing with these guys. And the most common concern is that standard within the industry, that there's a lot of people out there who aren't doing it well, and that a lot of the NIC guys are having to quote against people who aren't offering that quality of service. So it's trying to find the way that we can have a benchmark of what quality is. I mean, I suppose I'm talking about the regulation in our industry. We often talk about the Corgi system, the gas safe type system, where it's down to the individual contractor to be registered. I mean, what's your feeling on that? Is that a good direction, or is that going to bring a whole load of trouble for everybody?
It's a difficult question to answer. We have choice across the UK. Gas safe, like you say, it is for the whole of the UK. What we have in England and Wales is different to Scotland. So there isn't one joined up approach to it. And also, building regulations allow people to do DIY, do their own work and get it checked by building control, etc. So it would need a fundamental review of the regime that's in place at the moment, and maybe the new building safety regulator may start to look at that, I don't know. But the assurance for the consumer is use a certified business. That you've got a complaints process, you've got redress there, there's warranties for the work that's been carried out. So, from a consumer's perspective, use an NICEIC certified business.
And you're comfortable that that's value for the contractor? What you offer is value for the contractor? In
that context, yes, but also, we do a lot of other stuff that will help a business, a contractor in respect of, training. We have a technical helpline, 70,000 calls a year that we deal with. So, people will phone up and ask for help and support. We do a series of webinars. So there's a lot of added value stuff that we do to help contractors and electricians on their CPD journey to help support them as a business.
And thinking about the industry generally now, just casting the net wider, how comfortable are you with the number of apprentices we've got coming in, the attraction of the industry, I suppose, for a newbody starting out?
I think the attraction bit has been missing. If you look at what's happening in the installations now, it's such an exciting time around solar, batteries, electric vehicles. Technology is leading the installation. It's a lot more complex than when I started in the 90s. It was very straightforward installation. So it's such an exciting place to be, and really sort of us as an industry, you've got to be out there talking to people coming through schools to get them interested in a career that actually, from my perspective, I've never had a day out of work. It's such a varied industry that you've got to be seriously thinking about this to get in this, because if electricians don't get involved and start installing the technology, installing the smart homes and all that stuff that goes with it, somebody else will be doing it for us, and that's not where we want to be.
And it is a different proposition now, isn't it? Yeah, it's not to denigrate in any way pulling cables, but it's not just pulling cables anymore. It's very, very, the design of a smart home, installation of PV, battery, EV, all of those things are quite specialised. Do you think we need to start differentiating and having maybe different streams of the industry doing just those types of work?
I think if you look at what's been happening over the recent months, we have a domestic electrician route now for apprentices, so they want to focus on that, and that incorporates EV, solar, etc. So that is happening as an electrician role in the future. I think the installation electrician framework is being reviewed, so that will align with that. So I think people coming into the industry will have the skills to be able to do this in the future. But if you think of an electrician plus the other bolt-ons that they can do, where it can take them, I think it's a very exciting place to be.
It is an exciting place to be. I just want to ask you, and it's something that concerns me a lot, still about the gender balance. Why do you think it is that we don't seem to attract as many female electricians? Because of these new technologies, you would have thought it would become a much more attractive job, because it is less grunty now, isn't it? It's a job which requires brains and not just brawn. I wonder what it is and what NICEIC is doing to try and attract more females into the industry.
I think it's the educational piece that's missing still. I think going into schools, talking to people that are at an age that they can go down the apprenticeship route. I don't think enough of that's done at the moment to encourage male or female people into the industry.
Is that a role that you see the NIC?
I think we play a part of that, and so the industry as a whole plays a part. There's a massive piece of work that I think we need to do to address skill shortages, gender imbalances, etc. So there's a lot more work to do there still.
You're a chair of the Electro-Technical Assessment Specification, EAS. Yes. Just talk about that role and what it achieves.
So EAS is a management committee that has all of the competent person schemes providers, trade associations, awarding organisations, government departments that review standards for the schemes that we operate in the industry. So NICEIC are represented there, as well as ECA, ESF, etc. And what we do as part of that management committee is look at what's changing, look at the technology changes that's coming through, look at what policies coming from government, from the Hackett reviews, and we work together to raise standards in the industry. So it's an industry group that set the standard, the specification that we use, that the schemes adopt. So it is quite a key part of what we do in the industry.
Are there any changes coming down the pipe that you'd like to tell us about at this time?
We've been looking at updating the specification to align with the mandatory technical competence requirements, so MTCs for short, and that's the standards that competent person schemes use. So the government, DLUC have been updating the MTCs across all of the competent person schemes, not just electrical. So we've been looking at how that fits and works with EAS. So yeah, there has been changes made, and will be further changes coming along to align that. And other things, we've been looking at electrical inspector competence. So there's ongoing work all the time, really, in the specification of, okay, what is changing in the industry? What are the issues that we need to deal with? Do we need to produce CPD for certain things? So yeah, there will be changes coming in the future.
And as somebody that's been in the industry for a while now and is a senior member of the industry, how comfortable are you with where we are? What would be your assessment of the state of play here as we sit in 2023 in the UK, and the way electrical contractors work and the way the NICEIC work with them?
That's a really deep question.
It is. We like deep questions, Paul.
What I'm really encouraged with is that the industry is working together better now than I've seen for many years. And yes, you're right, I started my career in 1990. I've been working with committees and other bits since around 2005. And there's a lot more collaboration, there's a lot more working together for the industry. So looking at standards, looking at what's coming through in apprenticeship standards, I can see that the future looks good for electricians. People coming through, picking up the new technology, picking up the understanding of net zero. I think we're in a good place, but there's always room for improvement.
I'm sure that's a role that attracts quite a lot of social media interest. I mean, in fact, the industry gets quite a lot of social media interest. There's always comments on all the forums. What's your perspective on all that? Do you watch it and take note? Do you let it just fly by? What's your take on social media and the negativity it can generate?
I think social media is fascinating. People have a platform now to have a voice. We do follow, we do observe, we do look, and we do engage. Certain things we will engage with. So it is an opportunity for us to share some of the good stuff that we see. I think there's a lot of negativity shown on social media, but it's a small number. There's thousands of jobs that are done, high quality, good quality work that you don't get to see. You don't get to see the good stuff on social media. So we've done bits in the past around highlighting some of the good jobs that our contractors have been doing. But yeah, it's a useful platform, but it is a small percentage of the industry that we see.
Yeah, well, I think that's an interesting perspective to take, because it sometimes gets a lot more noise than it deserves. The negativity gets a lot more noise than it deserves. But you're right, there's some really good, if not always accurate, training stuff out there, done in the van, on the job. I mean, it's quite an interesting way to see how the industry is working, unfiltered, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and absolutely. You can sit in the van and watch a short 10-minute video about a topic, and there is a lot of content out there to consume now.
Paul, as we finish today, is there any final message you'd like to leave for those watching?
Yeah, there is actually. The important thing is the annual assessment visit. We need to come out, we need to look at the work, look at the contractor, look at the systems. We do remind people to book visits, and we do send out reminders for that. But the key thing is to get that visit done. If we can't undertake the visit in the required time, we then have to lead into suspension and ultimately removal from the scheme. So yeah, get the visit done. Be there,
be where you say you are. Okay. Thanks very much for joining us today, Paul.
Thanks, Dave.
If you have any topics you'd like us to cover, then please make a comment. To get discount codes for our Regs courses, please sign up to the newsletter. And to ensure you get notifications about the latest videos, please subscribe to this channel. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you soon.